Okay, briefly, I'm going to show you guys how to make brown butter bites my way. Yeah, welcome back. By the way, my name is Karen. This is Southern Ketovore. I'm in my car because I swear I have like 9 million living humans in my house, and on my days off, it's more chaotic than any other time because we all have the same day. I don't have like a day to myself at home. It's because everybody's off the same day, like all of us. Whew. So it's noisy. Anyway, brown butter bites. These are something that you can use on their own just to increase your fat intake. You can use these in baking, I'm sure, if you want a little bit different flavor of butter. You can add them to coffee. You can add them to chaffles, probably would be delicious. I mean, there are so many options, but I've been seeing them a lot lately, and I figured I would show you guys how I make them and the variations that I do in my house. The only people in the house that have these right now are me and Richard. I have them unsweetened. He has them sweetened. So I'm going to show you both variations in this video as far as how to make them those ways. So yeah. All right. So here we go. And I tried to speed up the boring parts so that it's not too dragging. So, all right, y'all enjoy. Okay, so first you're going to want to start with butter, whichever you prefer. I like to use the salted butter, and I'm using the one from Kirkland. You just go ahead and set a small sauce pot. I like to do mine more at medium, so I usually set it to 6 and put the butter in there. Some things you need. So you need a whisk. You will also need some sort of silicone mold. This is literally a $1 ice cube tray that I picked up where the bottoms are silicone. I just did a batch a little while ago, so I've still got some of the butter in there. Not worried about it. Additional optional ingredients, 100% not necessary. I like to have kosher salt, some sort of spice, either pumpkin pie spice or cinnamon that I like to add. And then if you want to make sweet ones, which these are the sweet ones for my husband, I do about like a half tablespoon normally of a skinny syrup. These do have sucralose and Ace K, so some people don't like to use those, but my husband is a little more dirty keto, so I do add these on. But I use basically about like 8 mils tops, 5 to 8 mils. So let's take a look at the butter. As you can see, it is starting to melt down a little bit. So we're going to get everything set up so you can kind of watch how the butter progresses through the heating process to get it to the browned point. So I am going to here and there speed this up a little bit so that you don't have to watch start to finish. This takes about 10 minutes. So it's really not too terribly long. And with it set on level 6 for the heat, or around medium for the heat, as long as you're in the kitchen, as long as you're nearby, you can hear the sounds that it makes and kind of keep glancing at it to see what's happening with your butter. So at this stage, the stick is just about completely melted, and the bubbles it's starting to foam. So it's not violent, it's not making any kind of noise, it's just starting to foam up at this point. So this is how you know, okay, we have hit melted butter point. Nothing too far beyond that. As you see, the bubbles are starting to get a little bit more active. From what I understand, this has to do with the proteins kind of starting to cook down, as well as moisture leaving. So you are cooking out some of the moisture, some of the water from the butter, so that we're just left with that like really rich fat, almost like we're making a clarified butter here. So as you can see, it's starting to get super foamy, and you're getting those larger bubbles kind of popping up as a result, in order to, you know, cook out that remaining moisture. This is kind of what I find to be the longest stage, is this kind of really volatile sort of bubbling. It almost looks like when you're doing like a candying process, but it just continues like this, typically for 2 to 3 minutes or so. So I'm going to go ahead and speed up starting about now. so you don't have to watch too much more of the bubbling. Okay, and as you can see, that foam is starting to dissipate a little bit, and you can start to see the golden color of the butter now. The bubbles are really large, but there is less foam. So at this point is when you kind of want to stay right near it and not get too far away, because the next step is when the butter will start to brown. So kind of at this point, you want to keep an eye and watch it pretty closely once you have those really big bubbles and very, very little foam. So we'll speed this up. And this typically is about 2 minutes of this particular stage. All right, so as you can see now, the bubbles are starting to get small, and we're starting to go back almost to having that foam start to develop at the top of the butter. This is the money spot right here, okay? So you keep a really close eye on it. These bubbles are gonna get tinier and tinier, and then in the very center of the pot, you're gonna start to see like a golden brown start to rise up. See, you can see that little bit of golden brown. So now we're getting to that brown butter. Now at this point, you can go ahead and pull it off if you want to, and it's a nice lightly browned butter. I like to push my luck with this. So far I have not burnt any of these, but I do like to keep it on the heat for a little bit longer in order to get more of those really delicious little kind of crunchy brown bits. But I do stir it very frequently through this process, and keep an eye on it, and you know, but you can see that richness. And by now too, your whole kitchen will smell like brown butter. So it starts to have this almost like a toffee-like or nutty sort of aroma. And so you can really tell you're hitting that nice cooking point. So here I've just turned off the heat, but I've left it on the eye, and I'm gonna keep stirring it for a few minutes, and then I'm gonna set it back off of the heat here in a second, after we do the optional ingredients. So you can go from here and put it straight into a mold, and it will be absolutely divine. I like to spruce mine up a little bit, both for myself and for when I make it for Richard. So for me personally, I like to add a little bit of cinnamon and some kosher salt. This batch is for Richard. He does sweeteners, so I'm gonna make this his way. So you can either stop right here and continue with the mold process, or you can add the optional ingredients. So first I'm gonna use a little cinnamon for him. And I do this while this is still hot because it helps with kind of, it gives me normally, after the cinnamon, I'll add the sweetener, and it gives me like a really bubbly, sort of hostile, back to hostile bubbling, and it gets a little extra moisture from the sweetener out. So you'll see what happens when I add it. I'm using the pumpkin caramel because the season, and it is delicious, but this is one that has sucralose and ACE, so basically Splenda. And I'm gonna add my little measure. This is a half tablespoon, little spoon in there. And you see how much it bubbles and it rises up. If you wait and add the sweetener after it's cooled off, you end up with some little ice crystals from the sweetener in the molds. So I found that if you do this when it's still nice and hot, it gets that extra moisture out, so you don't have those little ice crystals. And it's a more solid product that the bite of it is more like biting into a really nice chocolate. So I just make sure that this is mixed really, really well. And I continue to kind of scrape up those little brown bits that are typically floating sort of towards the bottom of the pan. And at this point it is off the heat, and I'm going to kind of let it hang out until it's time to go ahead and make the effort to put it in the mold. All right, and now that it's cooled, you can see that it's just this really pretty deep dark brown. I've got my little mold here, and I'm using my same little half tablespoon That typically will do the perfect amount in these little molds. So I'm going to get everything ready to go ahead and, I don't know what's going on with my camera there. Sorry, it was a little shaky. But I'm going to go ahead and get everything set in the mold here as well. Like I said, there's a little bit of butter. Those are little brown pieces from the last batch that I just made. I'm not worried about that. So I'm just going to start putting these right in on top of the other little compartments. Usually I get a whole ice cube tray out of this. As you can see my spoon, because I use this in the hot pot, it's a little deformed, but you know, it still does it. You can see all of those delicious little bits. So I like to kind of scrape the bottom as I'm doing this, so I get those little bits into each little compartment, just because otherwise, you know, they end up left in the pan, and that's literally the very, very best part. It's the caramelly little toffee-like nibbles that kind of sink to the bottom. So I'm going to speed this up so y'all don't have to watch every single compartment. Okay, so here we go. This is the finished I somehow missed one compartment. Now I'm adding a little kosher salt. This is, again, something optional, especially since it's already salted butter, but we really like to have that extra little bit of salt added to ours. When you do them when it's hot like this, the salt crystals kind of sink and end up in the dark brown bits towards the bottom. So you just take this when you're done, get it into a nice flat spot in the freezer and leave it in there for about a half an hour, and they should firm up nicely, and you should be able at that point to pop them out of the mold and enjoy them at that point. So here we are. These are my little brown butter bites. Perfect little half tablespoon size, so it's easy to measure, and they are out of the freezer. It's like a nice chocolate texture almost. So if you do the unsweetened ones, it's like, think Crunch and Munch, but without the sweet. I like to pop them out, put them in a Ziploc bag, and throw them in the freezer and call it a day. And that way we can just grab them whenever we're ready. And that's it. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching this little tutorial on making some brown butter bites in under 10 minutes. I am in my car filming just because everybody's home. It's kind of noisy in there. So that's also where I've done all of my voiceovers for this one, just so that you don't have to hear the chaos in the house. So yeah, I hope you guys try these. Remember, the possibilities are endless. Just doing them absolutely plain, whether you use the sweet cream butter or salted butter, absolutely delicious. I definitely think adding a little kosher salt, or if you have Redmond's, using Redmond's real salt, gives a little something extra that makes it really delicious. I like to add cinnamon as well to mine. You can also, if you're trying to avoid sweeteners, you could do an extract, like say an almond extract or a vanilla extract or something like that, if you want to do that, but you don't want to have anything actually sweetened in your butter bites. But for me personally, I like them just with the kosher salt and cinnamon. That's my favorite. But my husband, you know, he is metabolically very, very healthy. He can handle pretty much anything that falls in line with the more dirty keto type of direction. So having something with some Splenda in it, or if you sweeten it with stevia or monk fruit, whatever works for you. The sweetened ones are also delicious, and it can kind of help squelch that craving for something sweet. I like to use these personally after we have dinner. It's the old carbaholic in me. Used to always have something sweet as a wrap to my meal. So having these, it's not sweet, but there's a texture to it that's very, very rich and satisfying. So I like to have 2 of them right as I finish dinner. So, you know, finish up my dinner and have 1 or 2 of them just as my nightcap, and that's where I really, really enjoy and savor them. Otherwise, I kind of tend to pop one or two here and there if I realize that I've had a lot of lean foods over the course of the day and maybe haven't had a lot of fat. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, they're a great little dessert. They're also really good melted down in coffee or in tea. Guys, seriously. Anyway, the possibilities are endless, so I hope you enjoyed this, and if you decide to make them and try them, please let me know how you like them, and if you decided to have them plain or salted or sweetened or all of the above. Eventually I'm going to invest in some regular silicone trays, so I don't have to use that ice cube tray, but I mean, it works. And it was $1. So I'm not mad. You guys know me, I'm cheap. Or frugal if we want to be polite about it, but I'm cheap. All right, that's just how it is. I'm budget conscious. So let me know if y'all try them, and I will see you guys on the next one. All right, love you, mean it.